Over time, the notions of heritage, which originally sprang from European cultural backgrounds and have been highlighting on material authenticity, aesthetic qualities, historical and artistic value, and nowadays shared worldwide. International heritage organizations disseminating these notions, providing soft laws through guidelines, declarations, and conventions, are meanwhile influencing the way heritage is commonly defined and managed on the national and local levels. Through a case study on local heritage practice of Kihnu Island, a UNESCO World Heritage Cultural Space in Estonia, this paper aims to speak into some local realities in counting heritage policies and globalizing guidelines. How is a rural community impacted and what challenges are there? Estonia often proudly call themselves as a singing nation. From national song and dance festivals to the widespread popularity of folk singing and instrumental music, coming hand in hand with folk dance, costumes, and social and public activities around the country. Folk music traditions have been highlighted as essential parts of Estonian national culture. The new concept of intangible cultural heritage was first introduced to the Estonian language when the country adopted the UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2003. Estonia starts to develop its official narrative and preservation framework of heritage on the basis of convention when the country joined in 2006. Folk music traditions have started to be preserved, managed, and promoted as one iconic national heritage. Heritage in Estonia is managed under the main efforts of the state, research and memory institutions, as well as experts and specialists on folk culture, the majority of which as followers who has been playing significant roles in the development of folk singing and music traditions as a national culture historically, and in carrying on shaping official language and cultural policies, public perceptions and social practice on cultural traditions, which are today gradually referred to as cultural heritage. With the Ministry of Culture taking the overall responsibility of heritage in 2002, the National Heritage Board and the Cultural Heritage Department were established. The Folk Culture Center, supporting the survival and evolution of Estonian folk culture in the process of developing and carrying out the cultural policy, acts as the main state body in the field of intangible heritage. The Intangible Heritage Department within the center works as a bridge between different levels, upholding and introducing the UNESCO conventions to Estonia while managing the Estonian National Inventory of ICH, advising the community and administrators, and organizing awareness raising and training activities. The Folk Culture Center, an umbrella organizations of National Folk Culture Association, regional and professional organizations, mainly in the forms of cultural space program which work for the preservation and continuation of heritage culture, and these regional living communities as a whole. They work coordinately and consist as the main partners in the heritage field in the country. So, significantly in Estonia, the development and maintenance of Estonian ICH inventory and preservation of ICH in Estonia are upheld essentially by the long-established and systematic maintenance and management system of folk culture. In consistency, the National Cultural Policy, providing principles on cultural field and guiding ICH practice, value preservations of folk tradition and heritage as a key in achieving cultural continuity and national unity of Estonian state, and as essentials in the many and interlinked faced cultural life that has significant impact on the well-being of the people, the quality of the local living environment, and the international competitiveness of the country. Distinguishedly, the policy wills in harmony between the preservation and continuations of culture on the one hand, and the innovativeness and openness of culture on the other. Besides researching, storing, and transferring cultural memory, innovations and creativity for the continuation and development of heritage culture are particularly encouraged. First, enhancements of visibility and appreciation of Estonian culture and ICH in the public space is aimed with special stress on involvement of information technology and digital society. The national project on building digital folklore archive and heritage database, for example. Active engagements and initiative practice from citizens, the new generations in particularly, are valued as another substantial ways to keep heritage alive. Public events and activities, celebrations and festival others highlighted in state support for creating a kind of cultural promotion and transmission studies through social actions and life practices. Further on, the policy supports the innovative connections of heritage culture with new social environment and diverse developmental needs, with creative industry and entrepreneurships as two frontiers. Developmental activities and local entrepreneurships drawn from heritage and heritage technology, folk culture events, and cultural tourism are supported with extra value. While UNESCO is advocating safeguarding without freezing, with the involvement of the community, Estonia is perhaps taking a more proactive approach that is aiming at bringing up creative initiations and active practice from citizens and communities, encouraging transformations and changes for the interest of future generation, and taking heritage as a resource and a motivator for advancement and development. Then how are these policy and principles translated in the regional cultural space, in communities and citizens? When the golden and red colors started to catch on in the forest with the autumn breeze in the beginning of October in 2019, the UNESCO-listed World Heritage Island Kihnu welcomed their special guests, the first time from Gaustien in Finland, to their nice violin festival. At this big public events the Kihnu Culture Space Foundation organized outside of the community in the year, the Kihnu community will host the folk music group Napalit, and together on the island, they will have 2 days of workshops, learning each other's music, share skills and knowledge, present and know about local traditions and cultures of their home, and finally prepare and perform a final concert together. Main participants are the more than 60 Kihnu and Gaustinen youth and children. Under the instructions and lead of a music teacher from both groups, many of which are also parts of the management and organization team and have their families and relatives playing in the group, participants presented and learned Kihnu and Gaustinen folk tunes and songs with their own instrument, made arrangements and practiced together. At the final public concerts, the workshop participants perform songs and tunes from their own repertoires and those they learned together within 2 days. Although not perfect and still needed some instant hints and reminders from their teachers, standing side by side in their own dresses, the young generations of Kihnu and Gaustinen tries to play the tunes at one beat, note by note, word by word. They are connected through music they learn and share, despite the distance and the shortness of time they know of each other. The concert attracted many Kihnu residents and local news from the boundary county. Some other Kihnu people who were working in the continent during the week also come back. There were also visitors visiting the island by coincidence, and some people come especially for the interest in folk and traditional music. At the At the after performance from an invited Estonian folk music band, which also have special connections and long-term friendships with the Kihnu community through traditional folk music, two communities play along, dance in hands, and party with joints and love all together. For the organizer of both local groups, the aspirations on these events are more than music learning and sharing. It's also about heritage matters, just like how they found out about the existence of each other through the heritage platform. Both groups are connected with folk music heritage, with special local fiddles music, and their own common interests and years of efforts on preserving and developing with the cultural heritage on their own hands, in their own ways, for their own community's interests. Through this meeting, both groups wish to share and learn from each other's understandings and experience on heritage practice, from their own applications to a heritage inventory and the UNESCO list. And during these processes, their encounters with heritage policies and framework at different levels, from their own countries to the European and to the global ones. It's really nice to know that we are not alone, not the only ones struggling and trying this long and so hard to find ways to preserve our music heritage and pass it on to our children, said one organizer. The two rural communities wish to and eventually achieve to connect with each other. This group conversation, the new footage of friendship, could not happen, at least this soon, without the idea of heritage and the global initiations, disseminations, and implementations of ICH preservation. ICH is news to both communities that have been caring about their music traditions and community life deeply, and yet have been having struggles of finding a place within their own societies and finding a way to survive. They were not the mainstream nor the recognized, and they are relatively still not, but they are eager to act. An ICH policy and system in both countries have given them a chance, and the UNESCO has provided them such a platform. Among many heritage cases in the global world, this is a treasure. Heritage becomes, to some extent, a new way and space for people having the same interests and shared struggles to connect and grow up with each other. Heritage is a chance and a new world, as one organizer described, but questions remain. For individual citizens and communities, how can they grab this chance? What to do about it if people do have the opportunity to take this chance? And once people are taking on this new journey, how can they go steady and far? With conversations with the founders of Kihnu Cultural Space Foundation, Male Matas, and many active members in the Kihnu community, I get to know that the community has experienced many changes, and many things could have been much less optimistic as it seems today, ever since they started working towards to be and after becoming a UNESCO heritage. Started from the early folklorists and intellectuals in the country who had the rare access to the island during the Soviet occupations and started to notice the uniqueness of the island. And then from scholars and heritage specialists who started to work accordingly with the community, following the heritage policy on implementing the UNESCO conventions and building national heritage inventory of Estonia. And later, the growing amount of urban visitors from around the country and the world, Kihnu have been receiving applauding attention and recognitions from outside. Under the interactions with increasing interest and recognitions from the outside, while maintaining their lifestyles through time, the community is also let to know, will, value, and expect themselves in renewed ways. With members who have been carry on practicing and eager to be caretakers of their cultural traditions, the interest and recognition from outside triggered and helped maintaining such local interests and efforts with Kihnu community. Besides from the exploration and re-examination of their own culture, Kihnu people, particularly the young generation, who are now living and growing with this influence from the globalizing Estonia and have a tendency to have less interest and pride in their rural background and keeping cultural traditions, are gradually developing a sense of self-recognition and self-appreciation. They build more confidence about their Kihnu identity, more care on their home and land, more motivations to learning and practicing local traditions, and more interest in the community's future. This search of self in the bottom-up heritage practicing process, as encouraged in the Estonian cultural policy, means more than the searching on heritage knowledge and skill of their home community, and on the emotional bonded self-esteem and self-appreciations in Kihnu's experience. It also leads to a spring of community spirits that evolve on heritage and developmental matters in the community. It puts the questions of who I am to what I can do for myself, while perhaps also for my heritage and my communities to individuals. When speaking about the music school in the foundation, which has the violin festival as part of the program, Matas told me about her intentions. That at the beginning she was looking for a music education for her children and the children in the neighborhoods. With or without direct intentions on contributing to local heritage preservations or promotions, people's activities are influenced and further impacting upon the idea of Kihnu heritage and the connections people have with heritage and with each other in the community. Like the new Kihnu generation who are now learning music in the violin festival and in the music school upheld by the foundation, with the chance of and changes brought and supported by the heritage regime. New connections, activities, and memories that are beholding the Kihnu community are made and renewed continually. To be kept alive, intangible cultural heritage must be relevant to the UNESCO, to the community, continually recuperated and transmitted from one generation to another, as described by the UNESCO questions and answer fatlet. To keep the heritage in practice and keep the practice running in long term are also the biggest challenge the Kihnu community is facing. It's aimed by the Estonian cultural policy, and as can be seen from the Kihnu's achievement, the active engagement from the community bottom-up is one key factor fostering new circle that helps stirring new connections and transitions of ICH. But how to sustain and invite broader this active engagement from the citizens. The current treatments on heritage preservation and local development in Kihnu could not be possible without the long-term creative exploration, hard work, persistence, and devotions of active members in the community. Bringing a smile to the foundation team, some younger Kihnu generations are not only participating in events and activities, but also helping the organizations this year. The future of handing over and engaging the young generation is still very unclear and uncertain in the views of the foundation. Not just the regular pillar members in the foundation organization team, but the Kihnu community as a whole seems to share a common view that the Napasins group also agree on, and that is the caretakers and managers of heritage matters needs to be a real Kihnu member, someone local in a sense that's not necessarily from the community, but know and care about the community, live in and with the community. Like music skill, it takes more than one day to cultivate active citizens and train successors of local heritage management. One old saying in Chinese goes, "It's easy to conquer an empire, but it's hard to keep on the throne." Preparing a heritage elements for the inscriptions took many efforts for many communities and national states. But perhaps what is harder for all of us in the global world is to create a sustainable future for heritage and the community practicing on preserving the heritage. And as what Kihnu community and the Nabatsing groups are doing, building more diverse, in-depth, and long-term communications on heritage and also on heritage preservation practices can be the very first step to explore a possible future. Thank you very much for the attention on this presentation.